welcome to the Napoleonicist and another reviews special. Today I'm bringing you a review of a brilliant piece of research by Ron McGuigan and Rob Burnham, Wellington's Brigade commanders. It was Winston Churchill who said that never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. That was, as many of you will know, a tribute to the fighter pilots of the Royal Air Force following the Battle of Britain, and it's one of history's most famous quotes. His remark is quite clearly a tribute to the bravery of a relatively small group of warriors, and his words make us aware of a simple truth that wars are never won by one person alone. Now that might seem pretty self-evident, but sometimes I think writers and historians are guilty of perhaps failing to recognize that. Detailed biographies of key individuals from military history inundate the world's bookstores, but there is this phenomenon of focusing on the bigger players, what we sometimes call history from above, focusing on those at the very top who are making all of the key decisions which influence wider events. And in the process, I would argue that we do a little bit of a disservice to those lower down who also had a role to play, but are sometimes pushed to the periphery. Now, sadly, that's as true of the Napoleonic era as it is for any conflict. There are many high-quality works on Wellington, Napoleon, Blucher, and their immediate subordinates in the chain of command, but relatively little is known about men further down those ranks. Ron McGuigan and Bob Burnham's latest work seeks to therefore address that imbalance, and they've created what is a very succinct yet remarkably detailed anthology on 71 senior officers who commanded large bodies of troops under Wellington, yet have never received the kind of detailed recognition that they deserved. Now, this isn't the first time that Ron and Robert have come together to collaborate and produce a noteworthy work. For well over a decade, these two esteemed researchers have been writing enlightening publications on topics related to the British Army in the Peninsular War, many of which are available through Pen and Sword, who also published this title. Each one of those pieces of research has been noteworthy, not only for shedding new light on significant yet little understood topics, but also for their intelligent approach, careful presentation, and the clarity of writing. These are scholars who really take the time to make their work the very best that it can be. Wellington's Brigade Commanders is very clearly a continuation of that tradition. It is evident from the briefest glance of this book that this is a product of careful thought and meticulous research. Ron and Bob have essentially produced a series of short biographies examining the military records of those men who commanded brigades for any significant length of time during the Peninsular War or the Waterloo campaign. The information is highly intelligently presented, with each section beginning with a very helpful summary table that highlights the key biographical details and notes key developments in the individual's career. In fact, the entire book is written with the needs of the researcher in mind, with each page being packed with succinct, factual commentaries that amply demonstrate the careful and painstaking research that went into this publication. Every page contains a revelation or a little-known fact about these men, some of which relate to their personal lives, others their military careers. So numerous and interesting are those revelations that, quite frankly, I don't think that I should start picking out examples for you, because instead I think it's for the reader to enjoy picking up those little nuggets of information by having a look at this superbly researched and incredibly well-written publication. Each chapter also ends with thoughtful comments on the legacies of each man and their impact on the conflict. Ron and Bob are very careful about paying attention to the needs of the researcher by providing an appendix that outlines the periods that the men served under Wellington, thereby setting their actions within a wider context. A wide range of pictures of these individuals are also included, and it's a pleasant surprise to see that many of them are very high quality, which should not be kind of dismissed as an easy achievement, because it is by no means an easy thing to do, given that so little attention has been paid on many of these men in the past. Once again, Ron and Bob's professionalism has manifested itself here, as it does throughout the book, and they've gone to the time to track down portraits of these individuals and secure the permissions for using them, which is not an easy thing to do. as is the case with any publication, there are perhaps some areas where the book could be improved, all of which actually relate to using this as a starting point for further research. It's not the content that's an issue whatsoever. Footnotes are used rather than endnotes, and I think that's great and very sensible because it makes it much easier to track the relevant references. You're not having to kind of read a particular section, then flick to the back of the book to find it, and then flick back to wherever you were. Instead, you've just got to glance down to the bottom of the page. So that is a good and intelligent thing to do. I should also be clear that there is an extensive bibliography. But for me, I would have liked those footnotes to have just been a bit more detailed. Now, in complete fairness, I don't think that's down to the two authors. I think that's a thing about style guides that are imposed by the publisher. And so if there's one thing that I would perhaps urge Pen and Sword to do, it's, and in fairness, I don't know what Pen and Sword's style guide is, but if it's anything like other individuals who I've worked with and others that I've seen, there is a tendency to encourage authors to be as succinct with their footnotes as possible. I think actually researchers would get that little bit more from this book if there had been scope to say a little bit more in the footnotes in order to kind of give people pointers on where to take things. I think it would also have been helpful for scholars to have had a clearer indication of which books in the bibliography were drawn upon to assist with the research of specific individuals. It would also have been a nice touch for the authors to include perhaps a brief comment at the end of each chapter on where researchers should start if they're seeking to learn more about these brigade commanders. In a work that's broken new ground, that would then have enabled researchers to be able to build on this publication that bit more rapidly. But I think it's important to acknowledge that these are very small issues. They're quite selfish issues as well, to be honest with you, and perhaps a little self-indulgent, because I'm thinking about this as a researcher rather than perhaps a more kind of mainstream, inverted commas, consumer of the book. And they really don't detract from what is a fantastic publication. And given the reputations of Ron and Bob, there can be no doubt that anyone who wanted to know that little bit more would receive all of the information that they needed by contacting the authors directly through appropriate channels. Ultimately, though, reading this book is a strangely moving experience, as Ron and Bob have tracked the lives, the triumphs, and the tragedies of a whole host of individuals who played a vital role in the Napoleonic Wars. In the process, they've ensured that those people have finally received the place in history they undoubtedly deserved. So please do have a little look at Wellington's Brigade Commanders by Ron McGuigan and Bob Burnham. That's it for this review's episode. A quick disclaimer that goes into every episode. I am not sponsored by the publishing companies of this or any of the other titles that I feature, and I don't receive any money from the publishers or the authors to review the books that feature on this podcast. My opinions are quite simply my own, but I do have a rule that if I can't be positive about a book, I don't go public with my reviews. I'm not in the business of tearing people down. For that reason, though, please bear in mind that I don't take requests from authors to review books for this podcast. Thank you to everyone who takes the time to like, share, retweet, and keep spreading the word on the Napoleonicist. Please do leave a review and follow via your preferred podcasting platform. And if you're watching on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because it all helps to spread the word. And leave your comments. I love to know what you guys are thinking about the content and the topics that feature. I also want to take a moment to thank those of you who are showing, frankly, remarkable generosity by supporting this podcast on Patreon. If you aren't already a patron and think you might be interested, there is a link in the description. And patrons do get some neat little perks, like having their names in the credits and being able to influence some of the future content of the podcast. Tiers start from £1 a month, which I know is still a significant amount to ask, but it all helps to cover the overheads of production and in time should help me to increase the amount of content that I produce. I therefore make no apologies whatsoever for giving a shout out to my patrons who, at the time of recording, were Rob Griffith, Alex Churchill, Frida Seddon, Brendan Teeling, John Haynes, Anna Vakulenko, Beatrice de Graaf, Lynn Dawson, and Jamie Kingston. Until next time, I'm Zach White. This has been a reviews special from The Napoleonicist. Take care of yourselves, my friends. Stay well, stay safe, and as always, thank you for listening.